To discuss the real issues affecting the Tasman nations, this is Trad Tasman Talk, jointly produced by the Unshackled.net and rightminds.nz. Now, here's Tim Wilms in Australia and Dieuwe de Boer in New Zealand.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Trad Tasman Talk for another week on this Friday, the 23rd of September, 2022. I'm Tim Wilms, Editor-in-Chief here in Melbourne on this Grand Final Eve public holiday. It's a 4-day long weekend here, and it is 6 p.m.
And hello, I am Dieuwe de Boer for Right Minds NZ here in Auckland, and it is 8 p.m. On the dot. We're well on time today. I see some regulars in the chat already. Good to see you. Hello, everyone. And we're also just getting into our long weekend here. Chaos on the motorways out of Auckland, apparently. Although I'm happy to stay put. But our public holiday here is on a Monday. So we'll have the day of mourning, National Day of Mourning for the Queen on, what is that, the 26th, I believe. Gotta double check the calendar. Yeah. So that'll be on Monday. And yeah, it's a little bit difficult to have a National Day of Mourning when, obviously the Queen was buried on Tuesday night for us. And
well, it was Monday night.
Monday night. Yes. My apologies, and it went into the Tuesday morning, and yeah, it is obviously there's a state memorial service in Wellington. There's a service somewhere in Christchurch, somewhere in Auckland as well. I believe there's one tonight in Auckland and one in Christchurch later on. But yeah, there's no body, and obviously she's already buried, so it feels just like a regular long weekend rather than anything with any deep significance.
The memorial service for Queen Elizabeth II in Canberra yesterday was quite underwhelming because, like as you said, her funeral in London was on Monday, which marked the end of the official mourning period in the UK, and so our media decided to focus on, since it was a day off, the perpetual protesting far left extremists decided to have a protest burning the Australian flag in multiple cities, vandalizing the British consulate, and Green Senator for Victoria, Lidia Thorpe, she decided for a stunt to smear her hands in mock blood. And there was a New South Wales Greens candidate, Linda June Coe, told demonstrators that Queen Elizabeth was a war criminal. She did fuck all against the atrocities committed under her name and her predecessors and the institutions which she represents. And forgive my language here, they called the late Queen an old bitch, old slut, and one person yelled, "I hope she rots in hell," in Brisbane, where activists burnt the Australian flag. A speaker told the crowd, "Our message to England and the monarchy is to fucking burn." And one banner said, they were picturing a pig wearing the crown with the words "No kings, no cops, no capitalism," unless those cops are capsicum spraying people against COVID lockdowns. So yes. That's where the media coverage was. And of course, they didn't say that this was disgraceful. They just said it was emotionally charged protesters. That's what 7 News said.
Unfortunately, we had some of that today in New Zealand as well. I only just saw the photos in a few minutes before we started the show, but they chalked similar slogans in Wellington today. They had some kind of climate protests with these high school students who have been brainwashed into this horrific cult. Very sad, tragic stuff, and a sign of the times.
Yes, and one of the commenters said that if I burned a flag from the third world, I get charged with a hate crime. Well, Stephanos Oraculus, aka Australian Meditations, is still under investigation by the Australian Federal Police for a video that was uploaded at Australia Day this year, where three dressed in black ninja white Australians burnt the Aboriginal flag with a sign in the background that said Lidia Thorpe Abo Hor. So we've already seen play out what happens if a group of white Australians burn the Aboriginal flag and call Lidia Thorpe names.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a social breakdown or an inversion of the social order to see people say this about the Queen, and there's no repercussions for it. And really, actually, there should be. I think it's that super sort of well, it gets called classical liberalism, but it's actually not if you read the classical liberals. But modern liberalism, which basically says, you can say whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, everything is fair game, all kinds of these horrible things should be completely legal and have no repercussions. But then, of course, if it's done to some of their holy icons, then then you end up in trouble. And yes, thank you for the comment there, Dr. Foster. Yes, no, shouldn't draw attention to those to the specifics of that, and the vast majority. Well, I hope the vast majority are in support of, at least decency and order, and are certainly mourning for the Queen. But yes, it is, I think, worthy to showcase, well, not worthy, necessary to showcase that they can do this with, impunity, whereas you can't. You can't go after their icons.
Well, I'm a free speech absolutist, so you should be able to burn both the Australian flag and the Aboriginal flag, or the
but it doesn't happen. That world doesn't exist.
I'm just stating what my free speech beliefs are, as long as it's done in a fire safe way. That you're not the way that you're setting fire to it's not going to lead to a massive fire. That's I think another issue when it comes to people who burn flags for stunts.
Now, in addition to these protesters going mask off, the world leaders also went mask off in the past week. We saw the pandemic officially end with every single world leader.
The Chinese officials at the funeral, they were wearing masks because they still take the virus seriously, because they really care about their people. We'll get to some of the Chinese COVID zero madness at the end of the show if we have time. But yes, all the Commonwealth heads of government were there, including Jacinta and her fiance Clark Gayford. Have they rescheduled the wedding? Because she said in her back to normal speech that you could plan for weddings now with certainty.
Yeah. I suspect she'll need to really focus on her election campaign. This may be part of the election campaign, I don't know. But there certainly has been no mention of any wedding from Jacinta since it was cancelled. Which, well, I'm trying to remember if it was at the beginning of this year or...
It was. What is that? When she had the traffic light system 2.0, the Omicron traffic light system.
But in New Zealand, everything has been vaporized except for the emergency powers. So the traffic light system is gone, but the official emergency powers still remain with the government. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. The last of the mandates should be gone. At least the official mandates should be gone next week, I believe. And then there are supposedly still some mask requirements in hospital settings. But again, I don't know how well that's enforced. It did take a week, as I predicted. So it took a week or so for the masks to really disappear in 99% of cases. And now if somebody's wearing a mask, they really are the odd one out. It's only the far left freaks who have bought into the they turn the pandemic into their personality.
Their conferences, they still continue to wear masks, and as do a lot of the teal independents, especially our new federal mask Karen, Dr. Monique Ryan, the independent member for Kooyong, because she was confronted last week with her own mask hypocrisy live on Sky News. She was filmed dancing maskless at a community event. She's now been going to every community event in Kooyong wearing a mask, and as you can see in this photo, she's the only one in this photo wearing a mask. Because we keep getting told that it's part of Asian culture that they wear masks. There's a lot of Asians in that photo. Not one of them is wearing masks. So clearly it's not part of these Asians' culture. It's only part of the Karen culture in that photo. But here in Victoria today, we were one of the last dominoes to fall when it came to abolishing mandatory masks on public transport and rideshare, but still have to be worn in hospital and healthcare and aged care settings, which I think because you still have to wear them. You don't have to wear them at the pharmacy, because that's like a retail setting, but you have to wear them at the dentist, even though they like work on your mouth, and at the optometrist, even though it's about your eyes, and wearing a mask that fogs up your glasses at the optometrist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, in New Zealand, we have our easy to refuse mask rules, as they always have been. Like, I haven't worn a mask in over a year. I mean, I did like once or twice, like 2 years ago, and that was about it. Yeah, but I understand you still get your $150 fine, right? Or have those is that all gone too?
Well, mask compliance on public transport before the abolition of the mandate today was pretty low. There was a report on Monday that's still about sort of 60 fines had been issued, but like 160,000 warnings or free masks had been handed out. Stephen told us last week that when he was offered the mask nudge on the tram, he just decided to take the mask and put it on. Just
yeah. There's a question here just to move into my next story here. Let me. I got to scroll back up already. Dr. Foster, who saw Jacinda's interview on the BBC? I did see it, and she talked about how wonderful New Zealand's COVID response was, and how proud of it she was, and how she was, would do it all over again if she could. On that subject, we have had the media finally cover what has become New Zealand's first official COVID vaccine death.
Rory Nairn. There's probably been others.
I'm using the word official here, like the official coroner report, official inquest, courtroom level stuff. This guy was killed by the vaccine, I guess, and that's been played on the media. I believe you've got a little clip there for us.
A Coronial inquest has found that the Pfizer COVID vaccine caused the death of a 26-year-old Dunedin man in November last year. 12 days after receiving his first dose, Rory Nairn died due to vaccine-induced myocarditis. Coroner Sue Johnson is yet to establish, as part of her wider inquiry, the circumstances around Nairn's death or whether recommendations are required. It's thought 3 in every 100,000 people who are vaccinated could then suffer from myocarditis.
And we still have vaccine mandates in Victoria, in healthcare, aged care, and the justice system.
And that's the thing, of course, is that it was mandatory in so many settings in New Zealand. It was people were fired from their jobs. They were forced to have this, and now they admit later on, of course, as we have been talking about since the beginning, is that this could cause serious harm to people. This could kill people. It is immoral to force people to take it against their will, and that's what they did. And that's it. But as Lady of Charlotte is saying, they all admit to one or two, but they won't admit to the rest of the damage that they did and the people's lives that they destroyed because of it.
We had our former federal Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Nick Coatsworth, asked in a radio interview about continued vaccine mandates, and his response was very blunt.
Do we maintain the vaccine mandates we have, which I think are healthcare, at least in healthcare? Do we maintain those mandates or not?
Look, the mandates are a really difficult one, Neil. From my perspective, I'll tell you why. We know that these vaccines can cause heart inflammation. Now, there are not huge numbers of deaths from heart inflammation, but I think we can all agree that heart inflammation is a serious consequence of having a vaccine and is not the same as other vaccines, non-COVID vaccines. So, are we mandating harm? If we are, then that's a problem. And that's one first question. And the second question is, what's the public health value of mandates? Should we really, at this point in the pandemic, take someone out of their job with all the consequences to that individual and their families for a disease that really the World Health Organization is telling us we need to integrate with all other respiratory viruses? I think the answer is no.
Drip, 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 as I see in the comments there, certainly.
Yes. The mRNA updates versions.
Firmware update.
Yeah, somebody said there's more updates to these mRNA vaccines than there is to Microsoft Windows. No pun intended, of course. But yes, there's what is it called now? They're called the bivalent vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna. So there's the ones that are approved for Omicron BA1, and there's apparently a BA5 bivalent vaccine as well. That's the one that's only been tested on mice. It hasn't been tested on humans. It's going to be tested on humans as it gets rolled out, and
just absolutely shocking stuff. Still, to think they're still doing that, and we've seen excess mortality climbing across the world for various reasons. As full, I wouldn't actually attribute large numbers of that to the vaccines. It's the lockdowns and the consequences of shutting everything down. Delayed healthcare, people not checking, people not active. People not getting issues checked with their doctors or going to hospitals. These flow-on effects are massive, absolutely massive, and we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg come through now. And as another commenter has already beaten me to here, we've been saying this for 2 years, same thing, and now they're talking about it like it's some kind of novel idea, like, oh, oops, sorry, maybe we've done some damage when that was incredibly obvious from the beginning.
That other outbreak, monkeypox, our chief health officer in Victoria, Brett Sutton, otherwise known as Bedwetter Brett, has bragged that we've been at monkeypox 0 for a few weeks now. And so
New Zealand can't say that. Our numbers have climbed up to 9, I believe. Yesterday or the day before, I saw the 5 new cases reported in Auckland.
But he's in his second tweet has said that because there's still so many cases in the world, keep getting vaccinated. What is it? New York City, they've been bragging that they've flattened their curve through vaccinations as well. Like this Gynos by Bavarian Nordic. It's a vaccine that actually like worked, unlike the ones that we were talking about before. Like it stops you getting monkeypox and smallpox as well.
Well, speaking of pandemics and disasters and what else could go wrong, we have had a volcanic alert in New Zealand. The Taupo volcano has been set to high alert, alert level 1. I'm just getting PTSD from saying that. Anyway, it's been raised to an alert level for the first time ever, but we're being told that it's actually okay. This is fine. It's not going to explode. But also they are raising the alert level. So take from that what you want. It's who knows? We could be on to the next thing already. Jacinda's just returned to New Zealand from her overseas trip. Anything could happen.
Because we're having another spring and summer of La Nina, which means more rainfall. There's been another flood alert for the New South Wales northern rivers where Lismore is, which has already been flooded twice, as has northwestern Sydney near the Hawkesbury River, the Windsor Bridge. The reason, of course, these places keep getting flooded, Lismore, because it's on a floodplain, and because the Hawkesbury is near Warragamba Dam. So because governments they
it's the climate. It's got absolutely nothing to do
I know that some of the
it's got nothing to do with floodplains and governments.
Yeah, I know that some of the freedom conspiracy theorists believe that the floods in Lismore are deliberate because what is it? Dom Perrottet says we're going to build back better Lismore, and so they're going to put a high-speed rail through Lismore. That's part of the plan, even though the government, it's always a pipe dream. The high-speed rail. We've also had a Optus, our second biggest telecommunications company, has had a cyber hack attack, which lots of customers' personal information leaked. And the reason why this is sort of discussed in political circles is because former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian is an Optus executive now, even though she's not working with cybersecurity. There's people are saying I wonder if she'll be in charge of the Optus shredder to get rid of all the incriminating documents. A lot of memes going around, as there is in these sorts of situations. But on to it's almost the official beginning of the Victorian state election campaign on November the 26th. The slogan for those who are wanting Dan Andrews out, and it's actually one of the slogans of the Victorian Liberal opposition, is "Remember this November." So it's not "Remember the 5th of November," but "Remember the 6th of November." It was the last sitting day of the Parliament before the caretaker period begins, even though it's September. It was cut short by one day because of the public holiday, and that is when the Dan Andrews government dumped 52 reports onto the unsuspecting public. And you can probably guarantee there's lots of scandals in that when eventually the press pack get through that. I mean, they've been easily manipulated and spun by Dan over this past 4 years. Those among those documents, it didn't contain the review into the COVID restrictions, but the health Health Minister Marianne Thomas. She's now said the Independent Pandemic Management Advisory Committee has submitted its reports on the management of the pandemic. Given the delay in receiving the reports and expanded scope, I'll need further time to consider the findings. While I'm not able to table the contents today, I released the reports and the government's response prior to caretaker. Initially, she said that it wasn't going to be released until after the election. And now I was just talking about memes. There's been a lot of mocking and memeing of Dan Andrews' election slogan, which is Dan Andrews and Labor delivering what matters. And so in terms of delaying reports, Dan Andrews and Labor hiding what matters. There is also Dan Andrews and Labor delaying what matters. And with the red shirts rorts, Dan Andrews and Labor rorting what matters. And of course, Dan Andrews and Labor lying that matters. And there's also Dan Andrews fining what matters because it's been revealed this week that Dan Andrews is going to fine bushwalkers who go off the government approved bush trails here. Wow. So walkers and riders caught not using government sanctioned trails could face heavy fines, while swimmers could be barred from waterways without a permit. So the fine for walking off the park trail, $924, and wow. Victorians conducted what is it, intrusive research interfering with wildlife, soil, rocks, vegetation, or visitors that contravene any regulation to the park could be hit with a $1,472 fine. Those wanting to fill up a chainsaw with fuel or oil could also cop a $1,840 fine. The rules, which are currently in consultation, are due to come into force before the election. The Environment Minister said the reforms would only be pursued to preserve parks or heritage. So they'll consider these submissions and develop recommendations in the coming weeks. As we saw throughout the pandemic, Dan Andrews and Labor love obscene fines, and well, I wonder if there'll be a Victoria Police operation to stomp on the heads and choke bushwalkers who stray off the track.
Very similar to what I said at the beginning of the show when you talk about fines for burning the Aboriginal flag and so on. So basically, protecting their icons, their worshipping the creation and seeing that as more valuable than people. Absolutely insane stuff.
Yeah, the most recent
neo-paganism.
Yeah, most recent poll in the it was published in the Age newspaper by, I can't remember who it was by. Again, let me look it up. But yeah, again confirmed that Dan Andrews is favourite to be re-elected. Though, yeah, it could be Parliament because there's a lot of there'll be a lot of Greens, Teals, and other independents running. I've got the poll up here. It was done by the Resolve Political Monitor by Resolve Strategic. So the primary vote, according to this poll, of Labor is 42%, while the Coalition's is 28%. The Greens think they're in with an opening this week because of Dan Andrews' decision when announcing a rebuild of the Maroondah hospital, which he promised to do 4 years ago. A lot of his health announcements are just re-announcing promises from 4 years ago, which obviously demonstrate that he's done nothing to fulfill his health promises from the last state election. Again, the media being manipulated. This is all publicly accessible. They could easily ask Dan, how come you didn't do this, when you promised it last election? But the thing about the Maroondah hospital rebuild, renovation, whatever you want to call it, is that Dan Andrews is going to be renaming it the Queen Elizabeth II Hospital. And the co-chair of Dan Andrews' own First Peoples Assembly, Marcus Stewart, he said that the name change has turned the hospital into a culturally unsafe place for our people, which that's apparently a thing. It's not actually the hospital's not actually medically unsafe. It's culturally unsafe. And so, yes, the Greens, they've been very upset, and there's now this petition to not, because I didn't even know this Maroondah was an Indigenous name. So Dan Andrews, he defended it because the Queen was a long-standing supporter of Victoria's healthcare system and of the NHS in Britain. So construction won't begin though until 2025, and open in stages from 2029. But forget about what the the time frame for the hospital upgrade. It's all about the name. I mean, what good is a hospital if the name makes people feel culturally unsafe?
Yeah, I have no comments on that. I mean,
yeah. Meanwhile, though, the health failures in Dan's health system continues to be revealed. So, so there have been an alarming number of child deaths over the past 6 months. 7 pediatric deaths have occurred in emergency departments across the state since April. So this follows the 33 Victorians who died while waiting for an ambulance. Of course, the Dan stands claimed that our hospitals would cope perfectly well if just everyone wore magic masks. That's always their retort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was. And thanks for the comment there, Origin. It is indeed culturally unsafe for us. Yeah, I was thinking along the lines of, they're able to leverage quite a lot of power and influence, cultural power and influence. They don't. It's not that they really care about the name, but they care about being able to control what the names of things are. This is something we see in New Zealand as well. Lots of names of things being, changed or reconsidered and so on. And sometimes it's hard to tell whether it's a genuine case of culture or whether it's just purely done as a leverage, as a way to leverage power. So
neither of us have had COVID.
No, that's right. No. I've tried really hard, but
yeah. Even though we've done, everything wrong this year. I mean, we've been running around with nude faces everywhere, but nothing.
Yeah, and as I said on the last show, no vax, no mask, no social distancing, no nothing. But it's no luck either. No.
As Jacinta Ardern, she done a mask strip video to celebrate Smiles being back, like our leaders did.
No. I'm sure if something that creepy had happened, I would have heard about it. I'm not aware that anyone in New Zealand did anything along those lines.
Oh, well, it was very creepy when Anastasia Palaszczuk, Mark McGowan did their what is it, full face Monty videos. Now, there's been further bullying allegations within the New Zealand Labour Party, and also an update on the New National Party MP who has admitted he was a childhood bully.
Yeah, so we'll start with the Labor MP who was expelled. I'm not really sure if we covered that in much detail. It happened about a month ago now, nearly exactly a month ago.
It was.
So Gaurav Sharma was kicked out of the Labour Party, but they didn't expel him from Parliament. He was able to continue. He's able to continue on as an MP. He sits in the background somewhere behind, in the back corner, all by himself, and he continues to be a thorn in their side. Although he has dropped out of the news cycle recently, Labour has refused to do any investigations into the harassment and bullying that he alleges. And in the same way that they've refused to do any inquiry into the COVID response as well. Everyone in the country practically is demanding a Royal Commission of Inquiry into the COVID-19 response, and the Labour Party has the supermajority to block it still, even with him, I say supermajority, just the majority to block him, to block the inquiry. And obviously they don't need him either, so they've just let him sit there in the back corner.
Well, that's a way to get rid of bullying allegations within your party. Just kick out the accuser.
Just boom, gone. And so let him sit in the back corner. But then this week we have had fresh allegations made against Labour MP Anna Lorck, who had multiple staff accuse her of bullying. Obviously, we don't. It's always hard to know when it's the staff complaining about the MP, because they all come from these super left-wing universities, and they're all like snowflakes, easily triggered, right? So it may just be that they felt culturally unsafe or something, and that means that they've been bullied. So it's hard to know just what exactly is meant by these allegations. But her response to it, I think, gives you more substance than, or at least shows that there's some substance to it, because she said she was going to do some leadership training. So if you are known to be bullying people, what you need is some leadership training in order to stop bullying people. So that's what she's decided to do. And around the same time, we've had Christopher Luxon bring the suspended National MP Sam Ufindell back in. He was the recently elected member for Tauranga, and he is being exonerated by a report that was undertaken by QC, a KC now, I guess. And
yes.
he will be let back into the party. And also, nobody's read the report except for Christopher Luxon. None of the caucus has read it. Ufindell hasn't read it. And Luxon won't release the report, but he says that it completely exonerates Ufindell from any bullying outside of that, which he admitted to as a child.
Like bullying when he was an adult. Because there was some
when he was
uni woman who said he was a bully or something.
Yeah, that was basically the allegation, which was investigated. I do see the media, the articles from last few days, they do correctly refer to the KCs as KCs now. So that's good to see. They've switched to that right away. It's nice to see. So who knows? Who knows what really happened? But I actually think it's a good idea for Luxon to stick with that, to say, we did the investigation, we did the report, off you go. Everyone stop talking about it now, which is much better than just dragging things out in the public. He's sort of done that. He did that at the beginning when it came to the initial allegations coming out. He called a press conference and he made Ufindell front a press conference. It's all like absolutely insane stuff. Just shut up. And eventually the media cycle will move on. So He seems to have decided to do that this time, where he said, no, the report's done. I'm not talking about it anymore. No, you may not see the report.
It is refreshing for a political leader to give an accused MP due process and fair hearing, not either hang him out to dry nor just cover it up.
Exactly. So we will see if this bold strategy pays off, but it seems to have been wrapped up appropriately. We had the next scandal is we finally have a probe being launched into the conduct of Nania Mahuta, who's our foreign
The New
minister and
Zealand
local government
streaming
minister.
laws.
Basically, she provides a lot of contracts to her husband. And I know we haven't really talked about Mahuta's family connections in the show before. She's the one spearheading the Three Waters implementation, which basically nationalizes all local water assets and places them under iwi control. So several members of the Maori elite will have control over the country's water supply and have veto powers over anything that happens. She's spearheading that, and also is married to her cousin, which is why he's referred to as her husband. And he also happens to be getting also strange government contracts. So his experience is like working with rubbish or something, but he seems to get lots of contracts for all kinds of things. 3 of the 4 agencies that have awarded contracts to her husband, she was the associate minister on those contracts. The values of those are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And also a number of them, 3 of the 4, were awarded for work on the sole basis without competitive bids. And the 3rd was a grant. So he was sort of, just given these contracts, given all this money. And it's unclear to me as to what his business actually is, what kind of business he actually runs. He just seems to just get random contracts awarded to him. So that's finally being investigated now. I know I haven't raised it much on the show before because it was just bombshell after bombshell with no response from the government. But it seems to finally have done the damage, and it is being investigated. So we shall see what happens. The government will probably investigate and exonerate itself, as you can expect. But it just means that it's whoever's putting on the pressure here needs to keep it up because it's working. And at some point, it will. At some point, you'll find the sort of the breakthrough, the straw to break the camel's back. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's a lot of smoke in this.
It'd be best to use, say, when it comes to water, a dam wall breaking. That'd be the metaphor.
That would be good, yes, and possibly this could help to bring down the Three Waters reforms as well, which
or it's call it what it is, racist nationalizing of the country's water.
That's absolutely what it is. Yeah. In fact, we can go even further and refer to it as the sort of the implementation of an apartheid system in New Zealand, where everything is awarded based on race, where things are governed based on race, and that's not. If things are locally governed by a local community based on race, sure, whatever, that's absolutely no problem with that. But when your things are nationalized, things are taken out of their local context and then placed under racial control, is absolutely a recipe for a total breakdown of social cohesion in the country. It will rip the country apart.
We've had both David Seymour and Winston Peters on our local Australian conservative media talking about these proposed racist nationalizing water reforms, and it's the reason why there's now focus on this issue from our media is because, as a word of warning about this could be either unintended or intended consequence if the Indigenous voice to Parliament referendum is passed, and this Indigenous Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander advisory body forms. Like, who knows what type of race-based laws they could recommend.
Yeah, and only bad things can come of it, and that seems to be the intent. Really, the intent seems to be to break the country apart, because it's easier to it's easier to rule in a very authoritarian way a very fractured country, whereas a cohesive country with a single identity and a focused purpose, and strong government mandate, a strong directional mandate, is something that the left and the postmodern neo-pagan religion simply can't handle. It has to function by breaking down and destroying to achieve its aims.
We've got the new Albanese government's mini budget coming down in October, and this week the Treasurer Jim Chalmers announced that the forecast deficit for the financial year of 79.8 billion will now be 50 billion lower. This is in part due to booming commodity demand and prices, because yes, like when a lot of the rest of the world relied on Russia for well, particularly gas and grain, we've got so much natural resources here that we're the beneficiaries. If only we could use that for electricity of our own, that would be good. And also because of 20 billion in downgraded spending due to largely to plunging welfare and COVID-19 payments, because, well, there's less people this year being forced to sit at home and do nothing because they, went to some venue where somebody had COVID. The next Wednesday will be the end of the 6-month halving of the fuel excise, but they're still going to be spending to fulfill their promises of free childcare for everyone and parental leave for full 6 months. So it's good that the quicker the budget can be back in black, as the expression, pay down some of the, as Jim Chalmers says, $1 trillion of liberal debt, because with rising interest rates, we're probably going to have another interest rate rise next month with both the US Fed and the Bank of England raising interest rates significantly, because that increases the government's interest rate bill.
And we had ours go up as well in the past month, another 50 base points. And interest rates now are up as well. 1-year mortgage rates are 5.5% as of today. So things are definitely climbing quite rapidly, really, when you compare this even to last year. We were still at 3%, nearly double. And we very well maybe by the end of the year. So yeah, it's going to get rough as well. Obviously, the Ukraine war is probably heating up. And Europe is going to be cooling down a lot in the next few months.
More like freezing. I mean, the Russian, winter will obviously could change the course of the war, but the winter also means that, well, there could be a lot of excess deaths from people who can't afford to eat or heat because of energy prices. I mean, the UK, their energy prices have quadrupled over the past year. So certainly there's continued fears of a global recession, but Australia could still come out of it unscathed, like we did in the GFC, because again of the stuff we've got in the ground, which everybody needs and wants.
Yeah, and New Zealand's energy, same thing. We didn't fare too badly in 2008 either, and most of our energy comes from the water, the dams that we have. I believe close to 80% of our energy. Obviously, we'll struggle a little bit in the summer, but you'd need less energy in the summer. But yeah, oil is the difficult one for New Zealand, and we've shut down our ability to refine any of it. So hopefully China is nice and keeps buying that Russian oil and selling it to us at a markup.
Yeah, and they buy your milk.
And buy the milk. Well, the milk price is very high. So the New Zealand dollar is tanking. Absolutely. We were at 70, 50, 57, 59 cents to the American dollar, which is almost I don't know about historic rock bottoms, but definitely very, very painful to import. But the exporters in New Zealand are very happy with the terrible state of our dollar. It's always hard to make predictions in chaotic times like this, except that things will continue to be chaotic. So it's just good to be prepared, good to be ready for things to get worse. Even though they may not necessarily get worse, you should absolutely be ready for things to get a lot worse here.
Yes, what's the expression? Hope for the best, but prepare or expect the worst. Now, the AFL Grand Final is tomorrow back at the MCG because in 2020-2021, the Grand Final and the most of the AFL season were interstate because of the Dan Andrews lockdown. So Geelong and Sydney kicking off, or bounce, I should say, at 2:30 Eastern time tomorrow. It'll be probably 100,000 at the MCG, a sellout. But imagine if you're seated next to these Geelong supporters for the entire game. I mean, if you're still that concerned about COVID, I mean, just stay home. Like, why are you going around looking like that? But in the lead up to the grand final,
your average footy supporter,
there's been another so-called racism scandal to hit the absolute woke AFL, and that is this report that the Hawthorn Football Club commissioned into the treatment of Indigenous players at the club. And the trigger for Hawthorn calling for this report was the revelation earlier this year that Indigenous player Cyril Rioli quit quit the game in 2018. The final straw was when club president Jeff Kennett allegedly said to Rioli's wife, who had designed the Hawks Indigenous round jersey, Kennett approached her and commented upon her designer ripped jeans. According to Shannon, Kennett asked her what was wrong with her jeans. After making a retort about his boots, Shannon asked Kennett, "What's wrong with what I'm wearing, Jeffrey?" Hawks president then placed his hands in his pockets and offered her, he claims as a joke, some loose change to buy thread to sew up the jeans. So in the days that followed the exchange, this Cyril missed training and a crisis developed with a number of, and there were a number of top-level meetings involving Kennett football boss Graham Wright, the coach Alistair Clarkson, and Rioli's manager and teammate Sean Burgoyne. So yes, apparently this joke had a racial element, and so it was because of this I didn't know that this was such a traumatic event for to just make a joke about ripped jeans.
I see Amy's got the right comment here in the chat. A boomer joke, and that's exactly that's like what your grandmother would say to you if you were wearing ripped jeans. It's
Jeff
by
Kennett,
the way, I mean, just saying also spiritual boomers like myself would say that because I hate ripped jeans. But anyway, absolutely, very funny.
Yeah, Jeff Kennett is
the even funnier thing is the fact that they had high level talks and meetings involving like all of the senior people about the joke that was pretty obvious, like your average grandma joke.
Yeah, Jeff Kennett is a former Liberal Premier of Victoria, so he his tenure as premier is seen as controversial because basically he saved the state from becoming bankrupt because of a Labor government that he took over from, and did a lot of privatization and deregulation, which is considered very bad. And he's always been very outspoken. Also as Hawthorn club president as well. So he's always been a target. And the journalist who wrote this, Caroline Wilson, she's done heaps of reports over the years about alleged racism and sexism in the AFL. So Hawthorn commissioned their own internal Indigenous report, which was which the ABC published, and one of the former Indigenous footballers alleged that the then Hawthorn coach Alistair Clarkson won 4 premierships with the club. Has just been hired by North Melbourne, and then assistant coach Chris Fagan, who is now the coach of the Brisbane Lions. It's alleged that they told this Indigenous player his girlfriend needed to have an abortion to further his career, and then he needed to cut off contact with his family and move in with an assistant coach, as Andy Nolch rightly wrote on the Unshackled. If this allegation is correct, it's going to be investigated by some KCs. It's nothing to do with race. It's about it's an abortion scandal. I mean, the issue for both of us.
They pressured him to murder his child.
Yeah. Like it's incitement.
I'm guessing it wasn't because his child was Aboriginal. I don't think that
Hawthorn had a secret, eugenics program that they didn't want, Indigenous people to reproduce. But according to the the Twitter mob, that the allegations are enough to say that that it's fair to say that Clarkson and Fagan will never coach again. And of course, the AFL, they have their Indigenous round every year, both in the official AFL and in the AFLW. The AFLW's Indigenous round took place after the Queen's death, and so they didn't observe a minute's silence because it was Indigenous round. But yeah, despite all of that, and they had a welcome to country before every AFL final this year, but apparently the AFL's full of racism, because Collingwood did a similar report, because he's not an Indigenous footballer, he's of Brazilian Angolan heritage. Harold Lumumba claimed that there was racism against him when he was at the football club, and of course they claim that Adam Goodes, the reason that people booed him into retirement was because of racism, when it's because he was a flog who acted for free kicks, and also accused the rest of us of racism as well.
It's just occurred to me that sport, because I criticized professional sports in the past as being kind of the as being a sort of religious replacement in terms of giving people meaning and entertainment. And it's like the latest entertainment, the entertainment of wokeness, if we may refer to that as an entertainment genre, has been absorbed into these sporting organizations. Because people find it entertaining. Like, they must be able to make money because they get so many clicks from pushing the latest racism, sexism, whatever ism scandals, and that's part of the sport now. So half the entertainment is kicking the ball around on the field, and the other half is the latest shocking scandal, whatever the latest woke thing is.
I mean, there's also been a active feminization campaign of the AFL. I mean, the year began with an AFL journalist, Tom Morris, being fired because of leaked audio of him and his mates having locker room talk, which had the effect of, because it was leaked, outing a Fox Sports colleague. I'm not sure if I've got time to play these clips. They're only 30 seconds long. It's up to you.
Yeah, sure. We're coming up to the top of the hour. I said I wasn't going to go over time or go long this week because I'm very tired, going to struggle to stay awake in a minute. But sure, we'll go 5 more minutes. So you've got 5 minutes. Do with it what you like.
Yeah. So this is what got Tom Morris cancelled. There's no audio there, so I'll play the other clip here.
Alright, to the lads on tier 4. I don't know who the fuck you are. I'm not Asian. I'm not black. I'm not a woman. I'm not gay. So don't treat me like shit. I'm a man with a heart and I've got feelings. Love yous all. What's your name? Will. Well, I just met you freaking Will. I reckon he's a fucking cunt if I'm honest. But most of all, I reckon you're all good men. Thank you, lads.
The other clip, which there was no audio for some reason, when he was saying he's the hottest co-worker at Fox was Megan Barnard, but unfortunately she was a lesbian and she had a liquor license and was very good at it. So these clips surfaced the day after the Western Bulldogs coach had a go at him, accusing him of gutter journalism, and his final words were, "Fox backs me 100%." And the next day he was fired. Now, what he said was basically similar to Trump's locker room talk, but even though they were private conversations, he still lost his job for it. And another example of the feminization of the AFL is there was a Melbourne footballer, Harrison Petty, who cried on field after the Brisbane Lions captain, Dane Zorko, said, "I hope your mum dies." Like, he burst into tears on the field over that sledge. And I was just sort of, what's happening to, supposedly, the masculine sports warrior?
I don't really, I don't have an answer to that. I don't really care what happens to the professional sports. Turn it off. I hope it dies. Probably won't. Like I said, it's absorbed the latest in entertainment, and the latest thing in entertainment is manliness is not seen as a as sort of a cultural or entertaining feature anymore, as it was maybe 50 years ago when sports was at its height. And so it's adapting with the times. Perhaps that's my only explanation. But I don't really care. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care enough to know what the answer is.
I'm a lifelong AFL and also soccer fan as well. The Socceroos beat the All Whites last night in Brisbane. I'm surprised that your New Zealand soccer team is still allowed to be called the All Whites.
The All Whites. Yeah. I don't know how long that's going to last for. Yeah.
They didn't
all sports. Yeah, sort of. And I don't hate sports, but professional sports, basically. There's something about, say, the Olympics, or at least what it used to be, which was, by sort of who's the best in the world at this, that, or the other thing. That's perhaps interesting. Or, having fun with people that for sports. I enjoy that. Training, martial arts, things like that. I enjoy those, but I don't enjoy them professionally. I just don't see the appeal at all.
I do, which is why it's such a tragedy for me to just see this. We'll finish off with briefly, we mentioned at the beginning that communist China still having their COVID zero policy, which to anyone who still wants COVID zero and lockdowns, move to China. It's apparently about saving life, but a quarantine bus carrying 27 people crashed and they all died. I guess if they didn't die of COVID, then that's okay. And in one of the lockdown cities, Changsha, there was a tower that caught fire. Now, apparently they put the fire out, according to the Chinese authorities, and the building didn't collapse. The fire didn't melt the steel beams, unlike some other buildings.
I was waiting for that. I did see that on Twitter earlier on in the week, and those are about 90% of the comments. But yeah, and it looks similar to the Grenfell Tower one in the UK, where it's like they've got the eco-friendly cladding that they build these buildings out of. And it just turns it into a giant torch.
And this is what happens if there's a word of a positive case in a facility. This is Shanghai Costco when we got around someone tested positive there.
完了，泰斯克都在往外跑了，全部在往外逃了。现在，我天哪，说不逃逃不掉了，真的假的？你们刚进来。
And despite all their quarantine, they've managed to get a case of monkeypox as well. And so their advice is don't touch foreigners. Some old-fashioned xenophobia as well. So you wonder how long China will be in this, totalitarian biosecurity, health, fascist surveillance state.
Yeah, it's sort of bizarre to see in China's that they do totalitarianism well. They built the only viable form of communism, but the COVID stuff seems to be very, very strange. They're responsible because it doesn't matter, right? Everyone could catch COVID and almost nobody would die.
Because it's all about
nobody would die. There's no cost to the state.
The government, Xi, proving that wanting to prove that communist totalitarianism is more superior form of system because we can just we
copied their system for 2.5 to 3 years, and now we've all abandoned it, thankfully, and hopefully it'll never happen in the Western world again.
Never again.
No Bugman. We don't want the Bugman biosecurity state ever again. Who knows? Well, what will happen? Hopefully, it's been the end of it, but you never know. It will have to be vigilance required, of course. But now there's at least a lot of information to back up what went wrong this time. I think a lot of people went into it 2.5 years ago, and I remember saying then, people will wake up eventually. And yeah, they do wake up eventually. It just takes a lot
2 years.
But people realize that it's wrong, and once it's basically documented and they've experienced it being wrong, it actually does become harder to do again, because they only agree with it. They follow, they go with it the first time, or they go with it for a certain amount of time because it's the easy thing to do. But when they've been through it and they realize that it wasn't, yes, going along with it was the easy thing at the beginning, but then at the, after 2.5 years, it was incredibly painful. They'll be a lot more difficult. They'll resist it in the future more so. Yeah, it's, bizarre behavior, but it's important to understand it, because you live with these people. These people are the electorate. We do live in a sort of democratic society where all of the dumb people get to vote. So it's the question of how can you get enough dumb people to vote for you to make a difference.
Well, that's what Dan Andrews is counting on, more dumb people to get him re-elected.
The art of democracy summed up. That's what I've come to the conclusion of, and it's an interesting problem to consider and to try and crack. We'll see. I know we're like over time. I was going over. I'm going to start sounding.
Well, a lot of it would have taken 5 minutes, but like when I discuss these things, you've got about another 5 minutes worth of your own thoughts. So.
I do. That's right. I shouldn't have given you 5 minutes. That was my bad. All right. Yeah. Well, that's basically it from me. I've been very busy the past little while. I probably will be busy for the next 2 or 3 weeks at least. So probably no written articles or any other videos, but I have some plans to do some blogcasts, some video recordings of previous articles that I've written. I've got a whole bunch of plans for future articles to write as well. I've got some drafts and things. So expect Right Minds to see some activity in the last few months of the year. But I'm in, trying to do too many things at once as I usually do. So it's been nice doing the show. See everyone again in 2 weeks. It's been good seeing the regulars, and it's been very nice to follow the chat from all of you. So good night.
Yep. Thank you everyone for watching once again, both on the Unshackled and Right Minds channels. I'll be back with Stephen Berry next Friday, 6 p.m. Melbourne time on the Unshackled YouTube channel. Tim's News Explosion back on Monday, 8:30 p.m. on the Wilms Front channels. I've just filmed some fresh reports from Tiger Mountain with Richard Wollstonecroft, so they'll be coming soon. And of course, keep checking out the unshackled.net because we're still publishing new articles as well. Good night, everybody. Have a good long weekend wherever you are. It's a long weekend in Western Australia as well. They have their Queen's birthday long weekend, but obviously it's King's birthday now. So happy long weekend to everyone who's having one. Good night.
All right, farewell, and I hope that you enjoy the last aircraft going overhead, and good night.
Good night.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Trad Tasman Talk. To keep up with the latest real news and analysis from the Tasman nations, visit theunshackles.net and rightminds.nz.